Have you ever noticed how silence can feel both terrifying and irresistible? For many, the golden years bring a twist they never quite imagined, living alone for the first time in decades. The house that once echoed with laughter, arguments, and the hurried shuffle of daily life suddenly feels still. That stillness can trigger a wave of emotions, some comforting, some unsettling. And yet within that silence lies something most people overlook, the chance to transform your life in ways you never thought possible. Psychologists call it positive solitude, a state where you're not just alone, you're deeply connected with yourself. That's the journey we're exploring today. If you've ever wondered how solitude in old age could be the most liberating chapter of your life, stay with me until the end. Because once you see what's on the other side of loneliness, you may never fear it again. 1. Rediscovering yourself. For years, maybe even decades, you've worn different hats: parent, spouse, caregiver, provider. And in playing all those roles, your own identity often faded into the background. You became the glue holding everyone else's life together, while your own passions and preferences quietly slipped into the shadows. But when life slows down and the house empties, something magical happens. You get the rare chance to ask yourself, who am I when it's just me? That question, once scary, becomes an open door. Living alone gives you the freedom to explore hobbies you'd shelved years ago, revisit old dreams, and even form new ones. I remember when my own bustling household finally quieted. At first, the silence felt almost oppressive, like a constant reminder of what had changed. But slowly, I began to hear the rhythm of my own thoughts again. I learned what it was like to wake up and realize the day was mine, to design entirely. That realization is electrifying. It's not just free time, it's freedom. 2. Embracing the freedom. One of the greatest psychological shifts that happens when you live alone later in life is the removal of invisible constraints. You no longer have to align your mornings, meals, or evenings to someone else's habits or moods. Want to read until sunrise? No one will complain. Feel like having breakfast at midnight or dancing barefoot in the living room. There's no one to stop you. This newfound autonomy rewires how you think about pleasure. It stops being something you negotiate and becomes something you choose without compromise. I once spoke to a woman who laughed about her midnight dance sessions in pajamas, saying they made her feel more alive than she had in years. That's the hidden gift of solitude. It turns life into a playground again, where small rebellions against normal become joyful rituals. 3. Cultivating inner peace. In a world that seems addicted to noise and motion, solitude is like stepping into a private sanctuary. Without the constant push and pull of others' demands, you gain the space to breathe, reflect, and simply be. Many people find that living alone becomes a form of meditation in itself. Every quiet morning, every pause before speaking, every gentle routine slowly unspools stress and replaces it with calm. For me, mornings became sacred. I'd brew tea and sit by the window as dawn lit the world outside, feeling as though the day was greeting me personally. Those moments weren't just peaceful, they were restorative. And research backs this up. Psychologists have found that intentional solitude can lower stress hormones, improve focus, and even strengthen emotional regulation. When you start your day in stillness, the world feels less chaotic. 4th, strengthening resilience. Of course, living alone isn't without challenges, especially if it comes after years of partnership or raising a family. There are bills to manage, repairs to figure out, and decisions to make on your own. At first, this can feel daunting, but here's the thing. Each obstacle you handle becomes proof of your own capability. Self-reliance isn't just a skill, it's a source of deep confidence. I remember reading about a widow who admitted she was terrified of even basic household tasks after her husband passed, but over time, she learned to troubleshoot, make decisions, and trust her own judgment. "I never realized how strong I was until I had to be," she said. "That's the alchemy of resilience. It transforms fear into empowerment. And once you've proven to yourself you can stand on your own, that confidence spills over into every other part of life." 5. Building more meaningful connections. Here's a paradox that surprises many. Living alone often leads to richer, not fewer, social connections. When you're not constantly around people by default, you become intentional about the company you keep. Friendships become chosen, not circumstantial. You might join interest groups, reconnect with old friends, or meet like-minded people online. These bonds often feel more genuine because they're rooted in shared values, not shared walls. There's a freedom in knowing you can be deeply social on your own terms, engaging when it enriches you, retreating when you need solitude. It's a dynamic that makes relationships feel less obligatory and more nourishing. 6. Finding joy in simple pleasures. Living alone has a way of tuning your senses to life's quiet beauty. Without the noise and pace of a shared household, small moments take on new meaning. A warm bath, a perfectly brewed cup of coffee, the sound of rain against the windows. I once spoke to an older woman who tended her garden daily, calling it her living meditation. As she described the feel of soil in her hands and the joy of watching seedlings grow, I realized she wasn't just gardening. She was cultivating presence. Solitude gives you the time to savor these micro-joys without distraction. And those moments, though small, accumulate into a deep sense of satisfaction that no grand event could replace. 7. Unlocking creativity. One of the most underestimated effects of solitude is how it fuels creativity. When the noise fades, your mind has the space to wander, imagine, and create. For some, it's writing. For others, painting, knitting, composing music, or inventing new recipes. I met a man online who only discovered his passion for painting after retiring and moving into his own place. He turned a spare room into a studio, spending hours lost in color and canvas. "It's like time doesn't exist when I paint," he told me. That's the beauty of having your own uninterrupted space. It becomes a laboratory for self-expression. Studies even suggest that solitude can enhance problem-solving and innovation, because your brain finally gets the downtime it needs to connect ideas in new ways. 8. Prioritizing your health. Without the competing demands of others, you can finally structure your days around what your body and mind truly need. That might mean morning walks, yoga, mindful eating, or simply getting enough rest. Solitude creates the perfect environment for self-care, not the Instagram version, but the real, sustaining kind. When I started living alone, I began a daily routine that included meditation, movement, and cooking nutrient-rich meals. The result? Not only did I feel physically better, but my mind was sharper, calmer, and more resilient. Science supports this. Intentional solitude reduces cortisol, the stress hormone, and supports better sleep. By the time you reach this point in your journey, solitude stops feeling like something that happened to you and starts feeling like a conscious choice, a gift. In the second part of this series, we'll go even deeper into how living alone in your later years can become a source of lasting empowerment, independence, and even joy. But for now, remember this. The quiet you once feared might just be the key to hearing yourself again. And once you hear yourself, you can't go back to living on mute. By the time solitude begins to feel like a familiar companion instead of an intruder, something remarkable happens. You no longer measure your life by how many people fill your space, but by the quality of your days and the richness of your inner world. That's when independence stops being a necessity and becomes a source of pride. Living alone in your later years is not just about having no one else in the house. It's about stepping into the full authorship of your own story. You decide how each chapter unfolds, from the pace of your mornings to the rituals that give meaning to your nights. There is a profound difference between solitude you endure and solitude you embrace, and the shift between the two can feel like crossing a bridge into a brighter, more self-defined life. Fostering independence and empowerment. For many, the idea of independence in old age is tinged with anxiety. What if something goes wrong? What if I can't manage? And yet, with every small task you accomplish on your own, that anxiety gives way to confidence. Fixing a leaky tap, arranging your finances, cooking a meal that is both nourishing and exactly to your taste. These become quiet victories. They remind you that capability doesn't have an expiration date. I remember a woman who proudly shared the story of replacing her own light fixture after watching a tutorial online. She didn't do it because there was no one else to call. She did it because she wanted to prove to herself that she could. The glow in her voice when she recounted it wasn't just about the new light in her living room. It was about the light in her own sense of self. That's the kind of empowerment solitude offers. The realization that you are resourceful, adaptable, and stronger than you ever gave yourself credit for. Transforming loneliness into connection. Ironically, it's often when you live alone that you become more selective and therefore more fulfilled in your relationships. Without the constant presence of others, you can choose to reach out to people who energize you, inspire you, and make you feel seen. You might decide to join a book club, volunteer for a cause you care about, or simply invite a neighbor for tea on a quiet afternoon. These connections feel different. They're not born out of obligation, but from genuine desire. And because you've learned to be comfortable in your own company, you bring more authenticity into these interactions. You're not seeking someone to fill an empty room. You're seeking someone to share a full life with. That shift in energy changes everything. The joy of designing your own life. One of the most liberating aspects of solitude in old age is the sheer creative control it offers. You can shape your days like an artist working on a canvas, choosing the colors, the texture, and the pace of each stroke. If you've always wanted to try painting, writing, or learning a new language, now you can structure your day to make that happen without compromise. If you want to spend the morning in the garden, the afternoon reading, and the evening experimenting in the kitchen, you can. You begin to see your home as a sanctuary you've curated entirely to your liking, where every object, sound, and routine exists because it brings you joy or meaning. This isn't just comfort, it's a kind of freedom most people don't realize they're missing until they have it. Health as a personal legacy. Living alone also allows you to turn your health into a deeply personal project. Without the competing demands of others' schedules, you can commit to routines that support your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. You might find yourself walking more, cooking fresh meals, or practicing mindfulness not because someone suggested it, but because you feel the benefits firsthand. Over time, these choices add up, not just extending your years, but enriching them. And here's the quiet truth. When you invest in your own well-being, you're also preserving the independence you cherish. Health becomes the foundation that allows you to keep living life on your own terms. Leaving a different kind of legacy. People often think of legacy in terms of money or possessions, but solitude can inspire a different perspective. You may realize that your true legacy lies in the way you've learned to live, a life of self-reliance, intentional joy, and deep connection to yourself. The example you set for children, grandchildren, or even peers can be powerful, showing them that aging doesn't have to mean shrinking your world, but can instead mean refining it. You leave behind not just memories, but a model of how to thrive in one's own company. Embracing the gift. At the heart of it all, living alone in your later years is not about the absence of others. It's about the presence of yourself. It's about waking up each day with the knowledge that you are capable of shaping your own experiences, nurturing your own well-being, and creating joy without needing permission or validation. It's about finding peace in your own rhythm, strength in your own hands, and beauty in your own thoughts. And the moment you realize that solitude is not a punishment, but a gift, it transforms from something you endure into something you treasure. So if you find yourself at the beginning of this journey, whether by choice or by circumstance, know this: solitude has the power to change you in ways that companionship never could. It will challenge you, strengthen you, and reveal to you the parts of yourself you've been too busy to meet. And once you discover that version of yourself, you'll understand why so many who've walked this path before call it not the end of something, but the beginning of a richer, truer life.